Let me invite Gregory Stanton, the president of genocide. Greg, mic is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me to your meeting here. I have special thanks to S.M.N.E, who I first met back in 2003, and it was really S.M.N.E who brought my attention to the terrible suffering of the Ethiopian people. It was right after this massacre on December 13th, 2003, and he reached out to human rights groups, and Genocide Watch was the first to respond. And when we sent our team to investigate, we saw that, in fact, what had happened was a genocidal massacre. Genocide is defined in the International Convention for the prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide as the intentional destruction, in whole or in part, of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Now, as you know, there are many, many ethnic groups in Ethiopia. There are also a number of religious groups in Ethiopia. What is striking about the S.M.N.E regime is how many ethnic groups it has attacked. In other words, what we have found in studying genocide over the years is that genocidal killers are serial killers. They don't just stop with one group. They move on to other groups. Anyone who can oppose them, they will attack and kill. And that has been the pattern of the S.M.N.E regime. I worked in the State Department from 1992 to 1999, and at that time, there was great hope that perhaps Meles Zenawi would be, a great new leader for Ethiopia, that he'd overthrown Mengistu, the terrible genocidal communist dictator who had ruled Ethiopia for so long, and who was put on trial, in fact, for genocide and convicted. Now he's in Zimbabwe, where he seems to be free because of Robert Mugabe's granting him asylum there. Someday he will be brought to justice. But what we want to stop is the continuing killing of people in Ethiopia by a regime which has gone bad. They say that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is the case here with the Meles Zenawi regime. A regime that started, we thought, in a hopeful way, but has now become an oppressor to many, many groups. As Obang has just mentioned to you, one of the things that we have emphasized in our work against genocide is that we are all members of the same race. There's only one race in the world, and that is the human race. And there is that basic fact is what we have to keep in mind whenever we are opposed to genocide, whenever we're going to stop genocide. One of the ways that genocidal dictators are able to get away with their crimes is to divide their victims. They make the Amhara opposed to the Oromo, or they make the Tigrayans opposed to the Amhara, or they make the Somali of Agaden opposed to some other group. In other words, they divide. They divide and they rule. That kind of division needs to be overcome in Ethiopia, because ethnicity is the downfall of solidarity movements to overthrow tyranny. We had to learn that very same thing here in the United States when we were starting our own country. Our 13 colonies were divided against each other. Until they could get together, they had no chance against the British, who had colonized us. And it wasn't, in fact, until major massacres had occurred against, especially people in Boston, that the 13 colonies united and were able to then declare independence for the United States. Well, there have been massacres after massacres in Ethiopia. The one that the world knows the most about, of course, is the massacre that occurred right after the election. That one made the press. But there have been so many others, and you are all far more aware of them than I am. So what do we do about this kind of pattern of serial killing by a government? Well, first of all, we have to expose it. We have to make sure that the world knows about it. We use every means we can to get it put on Voice of America, to get it put on free Ethiopian radio stations that are all over the world now. We get it put on the internet. We get it put all over the world so that the world will know about what the facts are. And this government can't get away with it anymore. They're terrified of a free press. Secondly, we need to have legitimate investigation of the